180 Way Show. 180 Way Show.
The 180 Way.
Hey. Good morning, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jack. Time zone difference. You're hopping in the morning. I'm hopping into the afternoon over here. We're doing great.
I missed this part. I missed that part. There's a lot. There's a lot happening today. Hey, welcome to the show. We're into August. Can you believe 7 months of the year already passed? That is crazy, crazy. I was thinking about that this morning. No, we're already into August. So, what has happened in your year? Are you on track to achieve your goals you set earlier this year? And how is that going? And so it's one tie-in that we'll have today. But before we jump into that, Mike, you want to tell the people who you are?
Coach Mike Tanker, Coach Mike with Same Team Selling. And Same Team Selling, we're a sales training organization. The thing that makes us different is our trainer is world-class and nothing like her. And then I bring in the coaching. I coach the managers so that the managers can help with reinforcement and basically get a better return on investment for those that invest in our training. So better learning, better training, better coaching makes for better reinforcement and better skills taken to the field. SameTeamSelling.com.
Amen. There it is down below. Highly recommend Same Team Selling. And then I always jump into the show and I forget to talk about our sponsor who we're so thankful for, I.Help. I want to thank I.Help for sponsoring the show this year. If you're unaware of I.Help, they aggregate all of your online stuff. And so everything you have posted digitally online, they aggregate to one place. So instead of telling people, oh, here's my web conference solution, here's my how you pay me online, here are my social media links, here's my website, here's the company I work for, here's how you reach me via call, email, text, whatever, here's how you pay me. All that stuff is aggregated, amazing. It is one of those tools that the folks that run the internet got together and said, ooh, we need this tool. And so so thankful for the folks at I.Help. Encourage you to go get your I.Help account. Their URL is literally that simple, I.Help. So again, encourage you to go get your I.Help account. Amazing platform. Again, aggregates all of your online stuff. So thankful that they are sponsoring the show. And so appreciate the folks at I.Help. Go get your I.Help. The biggest thing if you go get your account today is you literally get to keep I.Help, your name, which everyone always wants on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and so, or TikTok. So go get your I.Help account so you can secure your name. Amen.
Amen.
Good.
Thank you, I.Help.
What's that?
Thank you, I.Help.
Yeah, amen. It's amazing. How do we get a sponsor? How do we rate a sponsor? Who knows? Yeah, so our topic today, if you've been following along as we roll out the 180 Way, really just talks about this idea of like, hey, what is your calling and what plans do you have related to that? So I think so many folks, especially as you get older, you start thinking about, hey, what is my legacy? What am I trying to get done? Have the things I've done really matter? And so as part of kind of the 180 Way, we really talk about what really is your calling and how does that affect the plan that you have for your life? Because I think a lot of folks do it opposite. They kind of blow in the wind with whatever happens and what's the best paying job or what's the best job or what does my spouse think I should do or what do my parents think I should do? And they kind of get blown from here to there. And there's very little consideration until later in life about what should you really be doing and what lights a fire in you, right? And so that's really our topic today of, hey, what is your calling? We'll start there and then kind of dovetail into plan. But the calling part, Mike, right? It's you see a lot of folks that just can't figure that part out or can't maybe don't spend the time or energy kind of contemplating that more.
Well, I think that, there's some major stages of my life where I lived accidentally that I was definitely not, I wasn't on purpose. I wasn't intentional. I'm talking about how I got to college, how I ended up with my major, how I graduated, my first job. It's hard for me to even take credit for any of that. Other people came into my life, I bounced off of things. I was like Ricochet Rabbit, like ding, ding, ding. But I was able to navigate the unknown, which was a gift. But I always wonder, like, what would have happened if I had more intentionality? What would have happened if I had somebody to help me guide me through those times? It was more like one of those things they throw off the boat, the little life ring, the little life thing. Like, Mike looks like he's drowning. Let's throw him a float, and my life was drowning to grab float, to drowning to grab float. And eventually I finally read a book about, goal setting, being purposeful, being intentional with my own life. And I can only imagine that there are people out there. I'm not the only person out there that that feels like, man, am I just accidental? Am I the accidental participant in my own life? Or am I the intentional? Am I trying to line myself up with if I'm not the author, maybe there's another author. I operate that there's another author out there for my life, but I have a say in how I align my life with what I was created to do, or do I just accidentally wander around and drift in and out of purpose? And so I think there's something so much different about living a life that is just moving in the same general direction on purpose, to see where it goes, because that's where my potential is, right? If wasting all this time accidentally detracts from me fulfilling my full purpose.
Yeah, I think as we break up the two, like, hey, what's my calling, and then what's the plan for my life? This phrase, I've heard several versions of this. The internet gives Steve Harvey credit. Your career is what you're paid for, and your calling is what you are made for. And so it's such an interesting thing. And I think when folks get to later in life and maybe have unsettledness or they're not happy, they're like, oh, did I really follow that little fire in my soul? Or, what was my calling? And so this thing about, we really want to separate them, like, between your career and your calling. And so I think it's really important. I'm not so, you see a lot of people are like, well, if you work in what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I'll just say I'm not a big fan of that. If somebody's never been able to self-actualize into that mode. But I think there is a lot to figuring out what are the things that light the fire in you. So for me, I've been in the public safety industry. I've been in procurement. I started my career in government contracting. I was a consultant for one of the big consulting firms here in the US. So those are just some touch points. But I think the one thing that was foundational, as I was thinking about today's show, was, I have always the desire and fire to be an entrepreneur. And so, I picked that up certainly after the first couple jobs I've had. And that's always been the fire in me, is finding opportunities, regardless of the industry, regardless of what the product was. I knew the entrepreneurial process was my calling. And so that was really the most important thing for me. Like, that's been the path for the last 25 plus years for me. And so that's really what I'm talking about from my perspective. It's like, hey, you don't necessarily have to pick the perfect job or the ideal industry, but like, what are the things inside of you that when you're doing something, like, I knew I took a job I had when I was young with a larger company. It wasn't entrepreneurial, it was in the process. And I was like, I just will not be here long. There was no upside. We weren't creating anything. You just had to follow corporate policy. And I knew I was round peg, square hole, or round peg and square hole. So that was it for me. And so that's, I think, what we're talking about is, hey, what's the fire in your belly that you're trying to chase? Not necessarily always getting the ideal job in the ideal industry, which so many, I think, career coaches, I think, put out there almost as a false bill of goods. And if you don't have that, you're probably not going to be happy.
It's funny, Jack. I remember the most drastic thing, the story that I think is around career versus calling. I met a guy that was an ER doctor. He was at least a regionally renowned emergency room doctor. He was the go-to guy for what you do in urgent care. And 10 years later, I met him, and he was a lychee nut farmer.
A what?
A lychee nut farmer.
What the heck is
I don't know. I don't even know what a lychee nut is, but he was a lychee nut farmer, and it had medical applications. He was fired, but even though he was successful in a career, he realized that he was never happy. It was never his thing. It was never, dad was a doctor. He became a doctor. He was a smart guy. He figured it out, but it never resonated inside. And so people from the outside world said, how do you go from being a doctor to a farmer? And he said, he feels like he was created to be a farmer. And so to help doctors, right? This leaching net thing may have medical, it's all in there, it's all wrapped up, but it's interesting that such a drastic move, the world can't handle that, right? You watch that happen, you're like, what? You know, like, how much money did it make as a leaching net farmer? How much money, like, and like, listen, there's something so much more valuable to being happy when you go to bed at night, to being unhappy and chaotic inside. It doesn't matter what your paycheck is if you can't find that peace that I'm living the life aligned with what I was created to do.
If folks are all, we always hear, take the best job or take the job that pays the most money. And, the extreme example is if you were meant to be a house husband or a housewife, taking the best job or the most well-paid job could be extraordinarily unfulfilling. And then there's a quote out there by Jim Carrey. He's like, I wish everybody could have all the money and success and fame and then realize how empty it really is. Because once you have all that, the next day, you really have to live out your life, and it can be really problematic. As we watch a lot of folks in Hollywood, we see some of the destruction or constant destruction that's out there. But I think just one last, nugget related to this is because it's hard. I know for me, I was like, what is my calling, or what? I was wound around the axle about it, and then. The one paradigm that always stuck with me, which I love, when Mike came on, I had this picture up. He's like, "What's that picture?" And so, one of the things I would just share with folks: if you have kids or if you have young people in your neighborhood, I just encourage you to go watch them on a playground or go watch them on a ball field, because one of the things you will definitely see with young people is that you ever wonder, like, why do some young folks, why are they drawn to skateboarding, or why are they drawn to sports, or why are some drawn to in this what is this playground area, like the parallel bars or things that require strength, and others are over there on the merry-go-round. And like, I'll just say that if you watch young people, it's really interesting. There's two things you'll notice. They are typically very persistent when everyone's doing something. But the other thing they're really adamant about, when it's not for them, they move on really quickly. You know what I mean? Like when a young person, you watch them and the whole group's doing something, and if they're doing whatever, they're doing somersaults or cartwheels or whatever. If the person tries, some kid tries for a while, like, this is not my thing, they go to something else on the playground. That's just how it works. But if they're good at it, then they stay there and they get great at it. If they're playing sports, like, sometimes the kid goes and watches a baseball game and they're like, this is not for me. But then they go shoot basketball and they love it. You know what I mean? Or sometimes some of the things require speed and they're running around if they're playing tag, but others require strength if they're doing like the monkey bars or something. Young people have this down. Like, what am I good at? What do I have affinity at? Where do my skills naturally align? And you see that if you watch young people play enough, you'll see the ones that are like, oh, I wasn't good at this skateboarding, but they'll be all scarred up. When they feel like I can do this, they'll keep trying and they'll get it. And you're like, oh, finally got it. But if they're not, if they're like, I don't have the balance. This skateboard thing is not for me. They just move on. Like they just keep going until they find their thing. And so I just think it's really important for us. It's such a great analogy for us as we get older. Similarly, as we try different careers and try different functions and try different industries, to make sure when we go, this is not for me. And you typically know pretty quick if you took the wrong job, you're in the wrong industry, you don't like your coworkers, you're like, oh, this is not. Then it's a big signal regarding what your calling is or maybe isn't. Okay?
Well, I have 3 adult children, and it's cool if they want to do what I do, but I think it's really important that I realize I have 3 very different kids. And if you have an only child, maybe you don't recognize that. But when you see 3 kids that are so completely different, you realize that they've got their own callings, that they've got their own thing that they're wired for. And it may or may not look like what you're wired for. It just may not. And I think that it's so important for parents to really take a step back and go, who is my kid? Not how is my kid like me? Just who is my kid, and how can I help them realize their calling, fulfill their calling, move towards their calling, as opposed to, I am a round peg in a round hole. I don't care if you're a square peg in the same hole. I'm going to make you fit. That's not good, right? That's going to hurt. That's going to scar the relationship. It's going to scar the kid, and it's going to put them on a journey that instead of being 22, moving towards their sweet spot, they're going to decide at 42, this is not for me. I'm moving back towards my sweet spot. I'm going to be a lychee nut farmer, right? And but we see these crazy things sometimes where, we just see somebody check out of corporate and move into something we don't think is corporate. So all of us that are in business are like, where are you going? What are you doing? Like, what else could you do? And basically they just showed us that they were smart and adaptable. So they were able to succeed in almost any effort, but it wasn't their effort. It wasn't their thing. And man, I can't beat the drum hard enough or loud enough that find your thing. It's so important. No matter what your age is, it's not too late to find your thing and then move towards it, right? Move towards it, because if it's not your thing, you're not suddenly going to have a heart change. You go, you know what? All of a sudden I'm happy here. Some people will say change your attitude. Maybe you just have a bad attitude and change your attitude. Everything starts to look better. But the attitude won't change when you're, like Jack always says, when you're a square peg in the round hole, you are not going to attitude yourself round. You need to look for what was I really made to do? Start to assess, like we talked about last show. Assess what you were made to do, find who you are, and then start moving towards what you were made to do.
I think one of the most amazing examples of that, let me just see, upper right-hand corner.
Oh my God, yes.
Get rid of this logo. Let's see, let me unbrand us for a second. I had a better picture, but it's really Pat Tillman in the upper right. Pat Tillman, if you're unaware, former NFL football player, and decided literally at the peak of his career, he was about to sign a multi-million-dollar. So he'd been in the league for 3 or 4 years, played for the Arizona Cardinals, and we were at war at that point in the Middle East with Afghanistan and Kuwait, and he literally left the NFL and decided to take up, after 9/11, a military career. And so again, Pat Tillman in the upper right here. And so really amazing story where he turned in his NFL, gave up his NFL contract, went to the military service, and then paid the ultimate price. Literally was killed in friendly fire. And so that is someone who decided, just like Mike said, I'm in the NFL, making a ton of money. The events in 9/11, what have you, affected him so much. He literally gave up his career and went into the military. That is the extreme example of somebody just feeling that calling in their life. It's like, I don't care. I have the life everyone outside thinks is ideal. I worked my whole life here to get to the elite athlete, and literally went all in. And then that story, in Hollywood normally ends with, oh, he comes home, he's a war hero. And in this case, he didn't. And actually, was killed again. Not only was killed, but was killed by friendly fire. They eventually uncovered. And so that's one of those examples where God had placed a calling in his life where he couldn't ignore it. And so I think we all we maybe don't want our life to end so abruptly like that, maybe we do, but to have that type of calling where you're able to walk away from what looks to be amazing is, an in-depth, internalized, amazing calling placed in someone's life.
And I think there's no better example of that. That's awesome, and it deserves our admiration. I think the other point that we want to make sure doesn't get missed today is that if you're unhappy, if your job is hard right now, it doesn't mean you're not in your calling, right? If you're having a rough go of it, it doesn't mean you're not in your calling.
Yep. It
means to self-assess, like really take a look and go, the things that I love about my job, are they still here? Is this just a job I'm always working with no joy? There are things to look at, to analyze, but hard doesn't mean wrong.
Yep.
Right? The right job is going to be hard, and you're going to power through it. You're not going to quit because it's the right job. That's what's so cool about it. When you find your calling, you're going to go through walls, over walls, climb mountains, dig ditches, go through the valley, walk through it all, say, no, why do you keep doing that? It's what I was born to do, right? I know, I've realized, I've discovered this is what I was born for.
I think it's a great point. Yeah, we're not saying hard means it's not your calling. Whatever you choose to do, we talked about last week, you're going to, step forward, you're going to have some uncomfortable moments. So it's not that. It's that, does it resonate with you for the long term? And the last thing I would just share on this point about calling, when I go speak to groups, especially younger folks, I always, or even I guess I've done this exercise even with mixed audiences, but it's like, hey, how many of you know your father? Right? In today's world, that percentage is a lot less than it was 20 years ago. And then you're like, hey, how many of you know your grandfather? It's still good, maybe get down to a third or 20% of the room. Yep, grandfather. But the one that's really interesting is, hey, how many of you know your great grandfather? Like anything about that person or great grandmother. Like how many of you know that a name, what they did, anything? And if you have a room of 1,000 people, maybe five, maybe get 5 hands, maybe. It's such an interesting thought. Like, what does all that mean? Well, if you say a generation is about 30 or 40 years, so if you think about that, that's 2 generations away. So that's 60 to 80 years. Once you're born, the generations behind you don't even know who you are. You're here. You're literally here, and literally 2 generations. Not. Oh goodness! Not like it's a double. Like your great grandfather, your great grandmother is literally 40 to 60, 80 years after they're gone. No one remembers who they were, what they did, anything. Because you have a fact, you have a name, you have an industry. And so as you think about your calling, what legacy do you want to leave for that's your family, by the way. That's the people that love you the most, are supposed to be the most dialed in. You're here as a result of whatever they did, most likely, what industry? Did they come to America? Did they work in a certain area? Did they get your family off to a good start? Did they not? You're typically the byproduct of 2 generations ago. And to not know anything, literally it's under 1% of the people in a room know anything about their great grandparents is amazing. And so as you think about your calling, what will be said about you 2 generations after you're gone? Like, will they know anything? And if the current trend continues, they won't even know who you are, much less your name, much less what you did, much less where you lived. And so encourage you that it could sound weird to think about what will people say 2 generations after I'm here, but that really is what you're talking about with your calling. Because I guarantee you, Steve Jobs' grandkids will know, who he was, and all the famous people. They'll be like, oh yeah, blah blah blah. And so maybe we don't have that world impact, but you can certainly have that impact on your family, so that they know, oh yeah, great grandpa, he lived here, he built this house, he or she led our family, And so just encourage you as you're thinking about your calling to think about what will be your legacy within your own family. Forget the world. Like, what legacy will you leave in your family?
It's interesting, Jack, that when the Bible talks about having an influence on the future generations, it really talks about, it says like your children's children, and then if you really are special, to the 3rd generation, right? That it'd be your great grandchildren. That it's interesting it's like I don't want it to work that way. That's how it works. Like, that's just how it works. And so instead of worrying about, like you mentioned that Jim Carrey quote about caring so much about being famous, it's like, how can you be impactful on the people around you, right? It's like, what did you do to raise the tide so that everybody's boat rose, right? Mm-hmm. What did you do to impact folks that you know or maybe don't know, but what are you doing to raise the tide? And those are the people, if you want to live on earth, that's how you're going to live on. You're going to live on through their memory of you. And you mentioned Steve Jobs. They are not going to remember Steve Jobs because he created an iPhone. 3 generations from now, they'll be like, an iPhone? That's ridiculous. What archaic? That's like us bragging about inventing the telegraph. Like, well, what's a telegraph? And so, but when you think about it, if they're still spending his money, they're going to remember good old Uncle Steve, right? Or Grandpa Steve or great Grandpa Steve. But if they're not, it's going to be, how did he touch my life? What did he say or do? What is there a family tradition that's 5 generations old that we do that is good, like that is changing, that is world changing, life changing? Then that's how we maintain ourselves. But if you're not impacting my life, I don't know you, right? You have to tell me your name 1,000 times before I can remember it. and if you don't impact my life, I will forget you. Right? We see
The thing
that
is, to impact people,
who's not.
yeah, the thing is to impact people's what they want to tell your story. You know what I mean? You can't be like, make sure you tell my story. It's like, hey, who you are and what you do you influence people around you enough where they go, oh, let me tell you about so and so. You know what I mean? Like that's the part that comes together. And so that really dovetails into, we started the year a lot about, you know, what are your goals and what are you trying to get done this year? And we do a lot of goal planning and goal setting and the different parts of that. But now it really ties into this step 6 of the 180 way, which is like, hey, what's your calling? Then what's your plan? Like what this is super basic, but you know, like what is your yearly plan, your 6-month plan, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan? What are those? And so without those kind of milestones, benchmarks, like kind of goal setting, goal planning 101, you're just going to get blown in the wind. And that's how people wind up in a bad spot. That's how midlife crisis happens. People just get blown around. And so that you mentioned, Mike, you mentioned the money. So that's the elephant in the room. Oh, I just want to be a millionaire. Just just 10 million. Just get me the money, right? And I mentioned the Jim Carrey quote, you know, so it's like, hey, what's the money? Like, where's the, what's the money that's happening? And so the money, like, where would you spend it? I think that's the key. Like, people always talk about the money. Like, where does the money leave you? Like, the money's great, but like, what are you going to do with it? Like, everyone goes, well, I want to be a millionaire. Well, great. Got that dynamic. Great. Now, once you do, what does that mean? You're going to do what the next day? And that's the part people don't think enough about, because they're like, I just had the money. Well, great. You had the money. Kevin Dorsey, KD, says this thing. You have the money, but hey, you had it in the bank and you can't spend it. Are you good? No, not good. Well, then what's next? Then what are you trying to do? So as people set their, 1, 3, 5 year plan, it's, I want to be a millionaire, a multimillionaire. That's, I don't know, probably half the people, whatever, 3/4. Okay, great. You want to win the Mega Millions, right? That just $1 billion. What happens the next day? What happens? And I think that's the part people never think about. And we've all known the stories, a lot of winners that ends poorly. And so that's what the next step is. What do you really want to get done after the superficial, have the house, have the car, have the money, whatever that is? What do you really want to get done over the next 1 to 3 years? Which then ties right back to what is your legacy and what is your calling?
And it's the why and the what, right? $1 million is never a why. It's just a what. And if you don't have a why behind it, what you're going to do with it, if it's just you, it's just going to come and go and nobody's going to remember you. And like, you're eventually going to be the mean old man down the street. And then when you move away or pass away, the neighbor's going to go, hey, we got new neighbors, right? It's like, yay, we get new neighbors. The old mean old man is, where'd he go? I don't know. Quite frankly, nobody's going to care, right? But if there's somebody that breathed life into your children, somebody that breathed life into the neighborhood, somebody that breathed life into, just maybe they're the ones that the park's named after because they did such an amazing thing of just breathing into other people, that there's a sacrifice there, and there's an others orientation there that really makes the difference of being, bitter and old and alone, or, somebody that, not all old, there are old people where the young people want to be around them. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be around them. And then there's old people that, like, we got to go visit them. Why? You're like, what? Why can we not? And so, that's something we're living for today.
Yeah.
Right. Because if we are forgiving and we are sacrificial and we are others oriented, that we're going to live a different life that has a different outcome, right? Round peg, round hole, because I'm living for other people. Yeah. And then as we keep going, we're going to find that we made a tremendous impact. And I think that sometimes we can see that, man, in 10 years, I want to be blank. Yeah. Right. The other negative thing that comes in, it's too late for me to become blank. Right. And I love that what somebody said. They said, how long does it take you to get that? Well, 4 years. It would take 4 years to get that degree. Oh, 4 years, really? How old are you now? I'm 43. Okay. So do you plan on making 47? Yeah. Okay. So then the decision today is, do you want to be 47 with a degree or 47 without the degree? Because you got a plan, right?
It's this, right? It's this, right?
Right.
This is the thing, right? It's, if you want the things people don't have, you got to do the things other people are not willing to do. And there's 10 variations of this.
Yeah.
But that's really what it is. The 5%er, 10%ers that self-actualize and do the things. It's not like some rocket science. It's like, Mike, I know you're a gym guy. It's like we all know how to be muscular Mary or muscular Bob if you want to do it. Everyone knows the drill, but only what 20%. Like you walk down the street, you're like, whoa. You know what I mean? Same thing with making it. A lot of it's out there. We know the process. We just don't want to do the hard things that the other people are doing, whether that's late late at night or early in the morning or at lunch, or there's always a trade-off. And so that quote is so amazing because it's very self-convicting, right?
Well, yes, and the way I learned that quote from other venue, right, was if you're willing to do today what others won't, you'll be able to do tomorrow what others can't.
Amen. Yep.
And there's a price to pay now. The Fram oil filter, I don't remember, Jack, you're always saying I use old ads and old movies, but the Fram guy used to say, you can pay me now for the oil filter or the air filter, or you can pay me later for the entire engine replacement. Like the thing is like, you're going to pay me. It's just you get to choose now or later. Now is a lot less expensive. It's a lot less expensive to not order that thing or to not consume that thing or not to do that thing than it is you're actually making money at that point versus paying the bill someday later when you've got some sickness, illness that really just came out of an abuse of whatever that thing was. It became consuming to you. It became, instead of you consuming it, it consumed you. And so in the context of that, when we choose to make decisions now that aren't popular, why aren't they popular? They're hard, and the word sacrifice comes in. Those are two things that most people turn away from. But if you're willing to do those things, and also, so much science on delayed, I want to say delayed gratitude. It's not delayed gratitude, it's delayed gratification. Delayed gratification, right? That if it's coming, but you gotta wait, you gotta work towards it because, Jack, you and I love sports, and we see people that make crazy, crazy money, right? Somebody's going to get paid 20 million plus, right, to go out and play catch. It's like, I mean, we can make it as detailed as we want, but somebody's going to throw a football, somebody else is going to catch a football, somebody's going to cream them. But for all that, I would do that for $20 million. I know me and lots of friends will pay $45 for the privilege to play in a league, right? So for those people that are paying to play in the league, that's really who we're talking to here. If you've got a gift that you've established that people are going to pay millions of dollars for, and you're going to do that, listen, you're going to still need the same life skills to manage during your career, because your career will end. If it's an athletic career, it's coming to an end. I don't care when it starts. It's coming to an end, and it's going to come to an end, generally speaking, a lot sooner than you thought. And now what are you going to do with the rest of your life? What are you going to do or do you still have any money, right? Like that's the whole crazy thing about becoming a star athlete and becoming a lotto winner. Even if somebody wins $1 billion, their scientists are going to start to study right away to see how long it takes them to blow through $1 billion. Because if they're not billionaires, they're not going to stay billionaires. They're just not. They're not. If they don't develop the skills to manage wealth, to do something well with that money, it's just going to slip right through their fingers.
I just want to say Lamar is going to sign a $40 million contract, and the Dolphins are getting suspended for trying to lose. So I just want to mix that in the show. But hey, I digress.
Yeah.
Dolphins owner trying to cheat.
But those people, if we don't have that gift, if we don't have that thing that we know we can monetize, then you've got to develop the habits in your life. You've got to put the 180 way habits to work in your life. And that's going to be how you live a different life later. Because we all plan on getting to 50, right? Jack and I plan on getting to 60, right? We all plan on it, right? So in that plan, are you planning for the quality of life that you want? Because it generally won't come from a windfall. It's going to come from you being diligent now in the habits that make for a quality of life that you desire later, right? Habits now, behavior, results later.
I think people try to figure out, hey, what is my calling? What do I really love? What are the things I hate? That's also great for defining.
Yes.
I don't like these things, right? And then laying out your plan 1, 3, 5 years. With this the thing that I found this online. I was trying to, it doesn't exactly summarize it, but it's like you're really just trying to like not let the world blow you from one thing to the next. That's how people are unhappy. That's when they look back and they have midlife crisis, or they're bored, or they hate their life, or they get a sudden divorce, right? They're like, man, I let this happen or that happen. And so that for me, that's my heart under this mantra, under what we're trying to do with the 180 way, is like being intentional about where you are. I think that's where all the conflict comes, is when people look around and they're like, ooh, how did I get here? And if it wasn't intentional, if you let the world, a friend, your spouse, your family pigeonhole you, and then you get to be 37, 41, 52, whatever it is, you're highly unhappy, discombobulated, right? And so that's really what we're trying to stop. It's like, hey, what is your calling? And you're like having some feelings and thoughts around that. Then what is your plan to execute against that so that your legacy falls through to your grandkids, to your great grandkids, and so that you have sense of peace as things are happening? Because a lot of times people think about the money, but there's a lot of people that are super happy not making a ton of money that love what they do, right? There was a lady on CNN the other day that resigned her position. She had reached, again, the elite. She made it. She was one of their midday hosts, and she's like, I'm going home to be a mom. That's just sat with her. She's like, I'm missing it all. Thanks for all this. It's great. Doesn't really compare to what I really want to do. And so that's really what this step in the 180 way, step 6, like, hey, what is your calling? And then what is your plan to execute it against that? So you don't wind up like this and you're like, how did I get here? Why did I settle for this? Right. So that's the part we're really trying to prevent in everyone's life.
Hey, Jack, can you throw up that graphic so what's really interesting is that when we make our 10-year plan, we need to roll that back to a 5-year plan. We need to roll that back to a 1-year plan, because what's so cool about that, and then we need to break the 1-year plan down. When we think about hitting the bullseye, we always see some distance between us and the target. I love this picture where the guy is literally just pushing the dart into the bullseye. Who cares how far he threw it? The whole purpose is to get there. And he made it easier. And the way you do that in the 180 ways, you keep breaking down your goals into smaller and smaller bites, and then you get there, right? And then the bowling guy, I love bowling. I did it all the time as a kid. And what's so great is there's all these marks in the wood along the way to the pins to help you be more accurate in hitting the right spot on the pins. Great bowlers don't aim at the pins that are 60 feet away. They aim at an arrow that's literally 10 feet away. And they hope, then they know with the way they do their thing that it's going to go from that arrow to
the crazy curve they do.
The crazy curve, or all those different things but they've got to hit their spot. And they know as soon as they let go of that ball by how it passed the arrow 10 feet away, if they're going to have any chance of getting a strike at the other end. They don't have to wait. They know that, I nailed the spot. Odds on I'm going to get a strike right now. And so that's what we need to do, is bring our targets closer to us by breaking down our goals into the smaller parts. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, imagine if you had 1,000 dartboards ahead of you, and instead of throwing it 100 feet to try to hit the bullseye, you just put the dart in the bullseye and moved on to the next dartboard.
It's so good. That's a great visual. Yeah.
I mean, life can be that way. We have this strange thing about, no. It's no good unless it's hard. Bull. Hard is built in. Hard is coming. That you don't have to look for hard. You don't have to make it hard. And I would just say to you, it's going to be hard. Don't make it harder. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Try to find the hack. Try to find the way around, the quickest way around, the quickest way through, but do it well, right? Do the work well. Yeah. And don't make it harder than it has to be. Hard's coming. Hard's part of the journey. It's unavoidable, but you don't have to make it harder.
Yeah. And I think the last thing from my end was, when folks think about getting there, I mean, a lot of people that have great ambition, willing to work hard, and this part about, I don't know if I want to lay out a plan, or I don't know what it should be. this is one of the things I always say to my team. You got to know where you're trying to get to, or you're always going to be lost. And so accepting just anything, or this is okay here. Like if you're not trying to go anywhere, well then great. Then you're just wandering out there. But then don't be upset with what comes with that, which inevitably in the second half, later, after the thrill of the new things worn off, you're like, either in your marriage, in your career, where you're living, your home, the car you're driving, if you don't lay it out and go, oh, here's how this fits in my plan, it'll definitely end bad. And that's what we see when people have sudden changes in their life. And so that's the most important part of, again, just reiterating, like having a sense of what is your calling, what are the things God put inside of you that are easy, inherent, you love, you're just drawn to, moth like a flame. Whoop, I love these. And then laying out a plan, not in concrete, right? But what is the plan to like self-actualize those? Like, oh, here's my plan. This is way out here. Do I really want to buy this house in the middle of Alaska? Does that fit my plan? And so that gets rid of so much of the noise. And it's so basic, but so many people don't want to spend the time and energy kind of meditating over their calling and things they like and don't like. And very few people want to lay out a plan for a year. We talk about goals, we talk about 2022 goals. Most people don't want to do that, much less what's a 5-year goal or a 10-year goal is crazy. Like what 10 years from now, what do I want my life to look like? Well, what's really interesting, if you're able to do that, and like you said earlier, Mike, work your way back, it gets easier. If you know exactly what 10 years from now looks like, it's so much easier than to backfill that plan of the steps along the way, right?
And my vision board, Jack, in the upper right-hand corner of my vision board, there's a picture of the little huts over the water in like Tahiti, and it looks really cool. My wife and I thought that was on my vision board. Thought my wife you nailed it, right? Upper right. So my wife and I spoke about it. Angel and I talked about it, and we're like, we would not be having fun at that place on the third day. We just don't. That's not really what we resonate. It's really cool. So we've adapted that. I'll send you my new vision board. It's going to have a picture. It's got a picture of Lake Como in northern Italy. And when we talk about that, we both get excited, fired up, and we just already think like we'll be bummed leaving there, right? The place in there, I'm like on the 4th or 5th day, it's going to be time to go. Lake Como, we think is a home run for us because we're already bummed that we're gonna have to leave it before. Once we get there, we're gonna have to leave. It's like, and so we made that course correction, right? Like, hey, I've got targets I have. That target was a good target. We found a better target. Change targets, right? Like it's like move on. Let's like new route. Let's go. Yeah. And I'm not gonna get to Tahiti,
But as you say that, like it is that thing of the hut over the water is so true. Like that is in every vacation planner's booklet. But you're right. It's like one of those things. Like if that's not your thing, like I used to live in Florida, but in Florida and now I'm in Texas. Like in Florida, you're either an ocean person or like a lake boat person. You know what I mean? You love the beach and you love the waves and you love the sand, or you go to the other side and you like the intercoastal with the the paddleboard and the boats and that's just how people are wired. So if you're not wired for the water and that picture is no good. So it's a great life lesson you just shared publicly. It's like that picture looks great to go stay over the water, but not for me and my family, right?
It's not the home run we thought it was, right? And so I'll let you know, like we will go to Lake Como and I'll send you pictures, right? We're going. And so, and we're excited about it. And
when is that? When are you going?
And first spring of 23.
Sure. Okay. So
anniversary is December of 22, 25, but it'll be too cold in Lake Como. Really near the Alps. It's in the foothills of the Alps. And so
we need a stand-in host. So I'm just planning ahead. So it's just
yeah. That's awesome.
Great. So again, hopefully this was helpful as folks. I don't think any of that is, I've never heard that before, but I do think it gets glossed over a lot. The planning part, maybe not, but what is your calling, and how does it affect your life, and making sure that you're honest and true to that. Because again, as I say continuously, what we all desire is to put our head on the pillow at night peacefully, no angst, nothing trolling around your mind. You want to be able to put your head on the pillow without a knot in your stomach. And so much of that starts with not even like major steps in your life. It is spending the time to reflect, meditate some, process what's happened to you, think about the things that you love. And so I just want to encourage you overtly to pursue that path of like, hey, what are the things that are intrinsic to who you are? And then as you start to set up your plans over the years, be true to those. Even if you can't execute them on today, that's okay. Maybe you're in a tough spot. Maybe there's some health challenges. Maybe there's some financial challenges. That's cool. Like, it happens to all of us, right? But then making sure you execute that as much as possible going forward, because that's where things get better. You find happiness. We all live in seasons of turmoil, but it doesn't have to stay there forever, right? If you get more true to who you are and your life plan and the people around you are in synergistic fit with that, amen. Then you put your head at night on the pillow peacefully, which is what we all desire. It's not the money. It's not the house, the car, your spouse. Those are all nice elements sometimes of it. But it's like, hey, there's a lot of people that have all those things and they can't put their head on the pillow peacefully. They're full of angst and nervousness and fear. And we all really desire the peacefulness. And so that's really what this whole step 6 is about.
You know, getting to where set a crazy goal for yourself that you think is crazy right now, because you're not even half the person you're going to be by the time you get there. But then you got to start working it out. You got to start working at it, because the people that we call overnight successes did the hard stuff that most of us aren't willing to do for 20, 30 years to get there, right? There aren't any overnight successes. It's just the culmination of a lot of hard work that went on in the secret place before it became known in the light. And so,
amen.
You know, you got to do the work now, and you can't beam yourself to where you think you want to be. You got to work your way through the journey. And I'm telling you, Jack said, and I agree with Jack, like, I've never had that thing where I love what I'm doing so much every single day. But I do love what I do. It's great. I love what I do because I know, because of the people that I affect well, right? I know that, and Jack does too, that we're affecting people well in the jobs and the roles that we carry out. And that's the mark, the value we bring to the table later that keeps us coming back over and over again. And so it's what we're good at, and it's what people are made better from.
Amen. Thank you, Michael. Hey, I just want to remind you, go set up your i.help account, our sponsor for the year. So go to i.help. That's literally the URL, www.i.help, www.i.help. Go to i.help.
Just type in i.help. You'll be okay. You'll get there.
Go to set up your i.help account. $5 a month. Amazing. Good. We will see you next week. Step 7 of the 180 way, as we endeavor to help you have a more peaceful, lasting, fulfilled life. We will see you next week on the show.